Welcome to Hassle-Free RE, the show where we share tips, tricks, and stories from the short-term rental industry and business alike. Hosted by Dave Menapace and Will Van Wickler. They'll help you navigate the exciting and ever-evolving world of short-term rentals. Whether you're a seasoned host or just starting out, they've got something just for you. In each episode, they'll bring you insider insights, expert advice, and real-life stories from hosts and industry professionals who have been through it all. They'll cover everything from maximizing your rental income and profits to creating unforgettable guest experiences and handling unexpected day-to-day challenges with ease. Are you ready to discover the secrets to running a successful short-term rental business without the hassle? Then let's get started. This is Hassle-Free RE.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hassle-Free RE. I'm Dave Menapace, president of the 5-Star co-host, joined here by Mr. Will Van Wickler, New England's #1 short-term rental and traditional real estate agent. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm fantastic. And I'm excited to introduce today's topic, something that it was maybe about a year ago that we touched on. And I think it's something that's always worth a little bit of back and forth discussion on. It's, the war on short-term rentals, really our local governments killing innovation or protecting neighborhoods. What would you say about that, Will?
Well, I think we have a pretty interesting take on it, right? I sell a lot of residential property. I own short-term rentals. You manage a lot of short-term rentals. You own them. You've done everything in the space, and you also sell residential homes.
Right.
I'll throw a bomb out there of I don't think regulation is a bad thing. And I'll let you go from there. You can run with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And especially the space we operate in, which is specifically at this time anyways, New England. So you have Boston, you have Portland, you have Worcester, you have Providence, Rhode Island. There's a lot of things happening in the places in these more metro areas where there is a lot of regulation around short-term rental. And then you have a lot of vacation areas where regulation has begun to be implemented, and it's not a bad thing. And I think the goals behind those regulations vary depending on the market. In a more metro area, you have hotels, you have students, you have traditional workforce people, you have people that just live there and rent, right? And so protecting the cost of living is a very real thing, where short-term rentals are not needed to sustain any economies in those areas. On the flip side, you have vacation markets like Cape Cod, for example. Old Orchard Beach is another one. Bar Harbor is another one. And the regulation is a lot different. It's more around occupancy in the home and what the local utilities or septic tanks or neighborhoods can sustain to keep it healthy, happy, and safe in those markets, while they're not banned or outlawed at all. So I think it's really, really interesting. And a lot of the landscape, in my opinion, hasn't changed at all. I think Airbnb was banned in Boston like a decade ago with some nuances because they are still allowed, but that's at least what I'm seeing. What do you think?
I'm seeing the same thing, and it all comes down to land use and zoning, in my opinion, right? So South Portland, Maine, two really not Airbnb friendly locations. However, it's been that way for close to 10 years, and I can't think of this groundbreaking impact, right? A lot of it came from this housing issue, and I think the regulation's good in these areas. Housing units didn't hit the market because of this, right? A lot of them just get transitioned to long-term rentals or kept in the portfolio, right? So it's not really solving this housing crisis, in my opinion. The properties getting short-term rented are not affordable. However, what it is doing is it's controlling these areas, right? These places with residential zoning where these, commercial type properties were getting utilized and kind of abused, right? By, I hate to say, more hands-off owners. I'm not going to use the word out of state, right? You could still be local and hands-off, but it was wreaking havoc on neighborhoods. And unfortunately, the badder operators messed it up for all the good operators out there. But there's really no good way to do this in these primary residential markets, right? I sell real estate. in secondary markets. And that's why I invest in secondary markets like you do. But these large metropolitan areas, people are blasting this narrative of the hotels are funding these anti-Airbnb initiatives. And you really got to think, what was the intended use for this house when it was built, right? In Newry, Maine, ski house, vacation rental. Bar Harbor, vacation rental. Beach house. Portland, Maine, residential home, right? So you could have a bachelor party right next to, a residential home, music playing late at night, all this type of thing. So I don't necessarily think it's bad in some of these areas. We could talk about some of the mechanisms and levers they're pulling, like you said, with septic and things like that. But I said it, I don't think regulation is a bad thing in these primary markets.
I 100% agree. And honestly, it opens up opportunity. So if anyone listened to our last episode where we kind of weighed the pros and
Mm.
cons between short-term rental and boutique hotel, what's totally allowed within pretty much any regulation that I'm aware of, as long as the property is zoned appropriately for it, is hotels and these smaller boutique hotels in those markets where short-term rentals might not be allowed. And I think that creates some really amazing opportunity because I think it gives the owner of that hotel or, the investor the opportunity to blend the best of both worlds, right? Like unique eye-catching, eye-popping design with some household amenities infused into what would normally be like a drive up roadside motel or something of that sort. So I think it's really interesting. And even the hotel that we manage right now in Peabody, which is just north of Boston, it's 20 minutes to get to the airport, to get to downtown Boston. You're right near Salem, Massachusetts, which is a heavy tourist area, which is also banned short-term rentals, or at least they're not giving out licenses anymore for it. And we see tons of occupancy in this 20 unit hotel where otherwise, there would really be no short-term rentals or no need for a short-term rental in a place like that. And it's just really unique. And to me, it creates a lot of opportunity.
And I think that's how you have to look at it, because on one hand, I'm a huge proponent of, property ownership and having rights and being able to do what you're going to do. However, that's all great until somebody abuses it, right? And there has to
Yeah.
be some sort of accountability system. Like, I believe that if I own a house, I should be able to do whatever I want with it. But unfortunately, there's too many bad actors in the space that ruin that thought process of like, why can't we all get along? It's the same reason why there's police, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
enough bad people out there that we can't all get along. So you do have to look at it from a lens of opportunity. And for instance, like a cool little loophole and something we made a YouTube video on recently, we have another one coming out on, is in Maine, the accessory dwelling unit ADU is becoming very, very popular through new zoning regulation. And if you read the zoning ordinance, a lot of towns don't allow short-term rental. But for instance, in Portland, an owner-occupied ADU, you are allowed to do short-term rental as an occupied unit, right? So you do need to look into that, read through the zoning
Yeah.
ordinance. We're going to do a very in-depth video on it, but like, what a great opportunity and what like a little niche pocket of the
Absolutely.
market of like, having a backyard ADU or an attached ADU to your home as a short-term rental unit. Or, Susan Terhune, State Farm Insurance, owns a property in Portland. We've had her on the podcast. It's
Yeah.
an owner-occupied short-term rental property, so a multi-unit building. So there's a lot of opportunity in these markets if you really dig into the zoning ordinance and look at it from a lens of opportunity, like you said, aside from the hotels. But you can still make it work. You just have to get creative.
I love that. I love that. Now, when we talk about regulations, there's sometimes there's one level of regulation, and that would be with the local municipality or town. Um, there's a level deeper sometimes if there's HOAs. So we have run into some scenarios. This happened in Cape Cod once. It happened not in Old Orchard Beach, but about 20 minutes west. I can't remember the exact town. And then
Saco.
there's Saco. And then this also has happened in Arundel, Maine, where the town is totally cool with short-term rentals. There's, some regulation around occupancy and some general guidelines around that and safety, making sure that they're safety compliant. But then the HOA might have a 7-night minimum or a 1 month, 30-day minimum as it relates to leasing or renting out your property. And that can totally drain your opportunity for creating an income on that property itself. Especially a lot of these short-term rentals now do the best if you're not requiring a 7-night minimum, because not everyone wants to go on a 7-day vacation, especially outside of summer. So as the investor, it's always smart to do several layers of research with the town. And then if the home or the unit is in an HOA, really understanding those. And then with that, understand how likely they are to change. Take a beat on what the general population consensus is towards the topic. And I don't believe I've ever seen any state regulations as it relates to short-term rental. Have you, Will?
I haven't.
Right.
But I think what you said is so smart, of like doing layers of due diligence. And then I think the other aspect I would say as a real estate professional is use your common sense, right? Like there are neighborhoods, residential neighborhoods in Old Orchard where, hey, there's no short-term rental restrictions, but I wouldn't sell there and I definitely wouldn't buy there. And I'm sure you could say the same thing in Massachusetts, right? Like homeowner associations, nobody's rented, so there's no rules, but use common sense, right? Who are your neighbors? Who's the demographic living there? Would they appreciate a high occupancy short-term rental, even if you're the best operator? When you went out and saw the home, did the neighbors come out and open their storm door and look who is coming, right? How are they going to feel when new cars are coming in every week? So I think a lot of it is, like you said, layers of due diligence, talking to people, and then making a good decision based on what's going to happen in the future, right? Because your neighbors can change. We've talked about early on how houses are situated and things like that. So there's a lot of variables at play here that might be different from what this piece of paper says today.
Oh, I totally agree. Absolutely. Absolutely. Any last pieces of advice, or think we covered the topic pretty well here?
We covered the topic pretty well, but it all comes down to due diligence. And I think that's the number one name of the game in real estate right now, is putting in your reps, doing due diligence, analyzing a ton of deals until the right one works. And if it doesn't, move on, because if it doesn't work for you, it's probably not going to work for other investors. So it really doesn't make sense to waste time on it. And then, gosh, buying a bad deal and then trying to resell it is like my worst nightmare in real estate. So that's my number one takeaway. What about you?
I love it. Honestly, same. Nothing will replace due diligence. And again, it's not necessarily just calling the town and talking to the HOA. Talk to other operators in the area, if there are any. Understand what their consensus has been as it relates to renting their home out in that market and how they've enjoyed it or not enjoyed it. All these things are really important. So at the end of the day, the buck stops on you if you're the investor.
And I'll say go further than just Googling it, because I don't know if you've seen this. I'll say, like, this is my bonus tip. Gemini is awesome, right? And it pops up the suggestion. But for instance, if you ask Gemini, like, is there regulation in Conway, New Hampshire? They'd be like, yes, you cannot rent there. And what it's doing is it's pulling an article from the North Conway lawsuit, right? So you really need to dig a little deeper. Even if you see that there's regulation in an area, I've seen a lot of people get bad information from not just throwing Gemini under the bus, but ChatGPT or something. And that's why having real conversations, AI can't replace that quite yet. So that's my bonus tip I just thought of, because I've seen it recently. Yeah. You got to dig a little deeper. AI is an awesome tool, but it's not great for finding regulation.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, I love it. I think that wraps up this topic on regulation. Will, if someone wants to buy a property, how can they find you, my friend?
Go to my website, willvanwickler.com, and we can book a call. And somebody wants to connect with you about short-term rentals, real estate in Massachusetts. How do we find you, Dave?
Yeah, just head right to davemenapace.com. You can connect with me there. If Instagram's your thing, just do Dave_Menapace. You'll find me that way too, and shoot me a DM. I'd love to connect.
Tune in next week with another episode. I'll catch you there.
All right. Later, man.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Hassle-Free RE. We hope you found today's tips and stories as inspiring and useful as I did. Remember, success in the short-term rental industry is all about learning, adapting, and staying one step ahead. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to leave us a review or comment on your favorite platform. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more listeners like you. Plus, we'd love to hear your thoughts and any topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And follow us at HassleFreeRE on social media for more tips and updates. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, keep it hassle-free.